Hi, this is Vinay Modi. In my previous video, I talked about having an optimum balance between speed and accuracy. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the importance of strategy and how you can execute and make it big for you in life. Sam Walton, the man behind behemoth organization called Walmart, was asked this question as to what was your strategy. His answer was that strategy is the one that works well for you, or a good strategy is the one that works well for you. And he said, my strategy was that there was no strategy. Well, that was on the lighter side, but on a serious note, a great strategy is always supported by tactics. And I'm sure a student, when he or she looks at this term, he or she is essentially looking at that capacity to visualize as to how other students are going to fare well in the exam that they're writing, and then they manage themselves accordingly. That's why strategy is very combative in nature, because it allows you to preempt the competitor's move. And that's what I've seen. Smart students or wise students are those who actually understand as to what can be the intensity of their competitors, and then they move accordingly. That's why we've seen a lot of talented people don't know that they have over attempted or they have under attempted. So can we actually work that few important wisdom nuggets to make strategy count in a student or MBA aspirant's life? Well, the first and foremost aspect out here is the change of approach and perspective which is required. People have prepared well for CAT, and of course that was their focus. The focus in CAT was towards reading comprehension, maths and data interpretation. Now the first change that they need to have is the shift towards vocabulary, general knowledge, logical reasoning and arithmetic, and package these four with essay writing skills, because almost all organizations have realized that future leaders and managers need to be good at writing skills, which has almost gone obsolete in technology enabled environment. That's something which students should really work at, and that change will really reflect big time in their success, because there are students who don't do well in the pattern that CAT exam is good at, but then these students, when they understand the game changing approach, then they actually end up making it to these institutions and have a great career ahead. That's one. Second very important tool in terms of strategy is the takeoff. Yes, they say, well begun is half won. If you begin well, then you've won the battle. So a good takeoff requires you to take a dispassionate look at the paper or the exam. My advice in this case is don't go with any preconceived notion that since I'm good at language, I'll start with language. Well, hang on, get the feel of the paper, because there may be apparent cosmetic changes, and that day would be a day where your strong suit or forte may not be the best. So it's better that you actually gauge the intensity and then take off. Once you take off, then make sure that you give complete attention towards it. Let's say if you're good at language and you're starting with language, then make sure that verbal ability and reading comprehension are taken together. You don't have to hop and then possibly see that your attempts are not optimum. I've seen a lot of people doing it otherwise. They start with reading comprehension when they start with language. Now there's nothing wrong, because it's a very individualistic approach, but I believe in an alien setting, where students actually, or there are disturbances initially, reading comprehension is a very difficult section to take off because it requires concentration. It's better to start with verbal ability section and find out questions which can be done the fastest, because that gives you that kick or that takeoff or that momentum, and that's what is very important. We've seen people who start well, they tend to find their way ahead slightly easy as compared to otherwise, and then they can move further. It can be possibly that they are good at number crunching, so they might start with numbers. There is no golden rule out here, but make sure that you cross-check the intensity on that day, get the feel of it. Next very important aspect, which I did mention in my previous video also, you need to really try and find out that if you wish to make it to these exams, if there are 4 sections, you should be good at least 2 sections, because that gives you that strong smoothness and transition. Easy tough is my mantra. If I'm good at 2 sections, then I will make sure that I keep the momentum and I keep that focus going on. So I'll start with something where I'm good at, or which is my forte. Then I possibly go for something which is relatively not good or maybe tough for me. And then I push myself in that section, and then I again move to something which is easy, because that gives me that breathing space, that momentum, that visualization, and then I focus at something relatively less easy. So easy tough can really allow you to have a smooth sailing and maybe get better focus or more focus. As I told you, all these exams will actually now have a very strong orientation towards general knowledge. People have big problem in terms of actually knowing as to when to use GK as a tool or as a section in the exam. And I've seen a lot of people starting with general knowledge. Now, there is nothing wrong with that. There are people who do well. But I believe this is something which can be a buffer. You should use GK section for your own advantage when you tend to get tired, or maybe let's say after first part of the paper, maybe first hour. Because GK is something which you know, then you can crack it. And if you don't know, you don't even actually go and find that question. So let's say if there are 30 questions, you will give 10 to 15 minutes and you try and optimize that. So it's better that you actually use it as a buffer, because that gives you that sense of relaxation also, assuming that you prepared GK reasonably well. So my advice is that GK should not be taken at the end and should not be, the one to start with. Find out your niche and then optimize. This can actually help you gain better momentum for next section. Next, what happens in exams like these, examiner also plays a game and has a very cosmetic, shift to the paper. And students tend to really focus on those areas wherein they are not good at, and they tend to get stuck, And I believe that internal manifestation that I'm going to find questions which are for me will be very important. Let's say people get stuck, then what happens? And that's where I've seen intelligent people, have that intellectual arrogance which causes them disabling ignorance. They tend to overspend time on their so-called strong point or forte, for example, maths. So they pick up a question wherein they have actually mastered that art, and they tend to focus at their question for 6 minutes, 7 minutes, and then they realize that they've already lost big time. It's better to have thumb rule. When I say thumb rule, it's better to actually focus on every dimension and have certain threshold thumb rule. For example, reading comprehension. So I've seen students spending 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and then realizing that this is the passage that they're not understanding. So what they do is that they tend to do it even if they're not getting it, because they already have wasted time in their mind. I believe 3-4 minutes reading comprehension passage you're not getting, just leave it. Don't have that guilt. Data interpretation question. Have that 3 minutes thumb rule, that if you are not getting anything out of the first 3 minutes, leave it. Maths question, 1.5 to 2 minutes, you're not getting anything out of it, leave it. Learn to leave. Remember, smart cricketers are those who know how to leave a ball rather than actually play the ball. Because you can play, but it's very important for people to know as to which ball is to be left. So it's very important for you to know as to how to leave. That's a very important tactical, victory that people can have. These are few ways through which students can really enjoy a strategy. Macro and micro, the last part of this video, have a very clear focus towards micro and macro aspect of strategy. Let's say you pick up verbal ability macro part. Within macro also have a micro strategy, that in verbal ability I'm going to spend, let's say, time on para formation, sequencing, fill in the blanks, synonym, antonyms, and how much time will I give to X number of questions based on my past experience or simulated papers or simulation exercises, and then stick to those, because ultimate challenge is to manage time and not exceeding it unnecessarily. Believe you me, for every section there can be a micro strategic tool. For example, data interpretation, you can have pie chart, bar chart, caselet. So have that, orientation towards spending time. That, okay, I'm giving 25 minutes to X questions. So when I'm doing one set, how many minutes will I spend? And should I do this question or this set or not? It's very important. For example, reading comprehension. If you're good at philosophy-oriented passages, then you pick philosophy-oriented passage and this is the time that I give. Or let's say you're not good at environment or geography-oriented passages, you don't take it. That's micro strategy. And I'm sure if you actually allow these important inputs to really, sink in, you can have the last laugh. I'm sure this is the way one can have better approach towards strategy. In my next video, I'm going to talk about the eternal challenge between smart work and hard work. Thank you.